Sign of the Southland, Mr. Purdy, to you first. A day of disappointing second halves, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yeah. Between either international soccer or local collegiate basketball, we had that on both ends of the spectrum. I'm wearing my U.S. jersey still today from today. I haven't gotten to break it out, so the World Cup was my time to finally put it to good use. It looks a lot
Oh,
better than the
buddy,
current
I've been
uniforms. Just to go
doing
down that
some.
that rabbit hole, but
Uh,
there's a lot of things that could have been better. I'll say that for England's jersey as well. We just had just the lesser version of that.
England's jerseys are bad, but that's beyond the point. Mr. Grant, you texted us earlier today and thought that our World Cup was entirely over. How do you feel about learning that it's not?
I mean, I knew it wasn't over. You play another game. I just was trying to be polite and give you some time to process and manage and be okay because it's a big deal. The soccer times.
Akshay's denying his feelings by being a grammar Nazi. It's a weird time.
See, Akshay's never understood my bits, which is why they turn into bits. So I'm not surprised.
Speaking of bits, tell me about Georgia Tech's bit at the NCAA Cross Country Championships.
Wow, you're a great host. Liz Galarza ran in Stillwater this weekend. I believe, yeah, Stillwater. NCAA championship. She represented Georgia Tech as an individual after a superlative performance at the NCAA South regions. At the big championship, I will say she ran a 21:27.5. That's good for 207th overall. So, yeah, not not a world beater type performance, but it's just kind of an honor to get the ability to run and try and go get one last race in for Tech, and she's been pretty exemplary. So good to see her get that shot, kind of in the same way as a legacy of the women's cross country team that has made a couple of trips to NCAA's recently. So it's good to be in the mix and kind of keep that performance level high, even if the whole team's not there.
One news and note on the combined cross country track and field teams, the track and field schedule was released. Any interesting tidbits from there?
Honestly, I haven't had the time to dive in, so I'm going to pull it up and just kind of give it a scan because it winds up being a lot of the same events year in, year out. So that kind of helps me out. But they're at the Clemson opener and the Clemson invite. The opener is usually before winter break. This year, that's no different. They go to Clemson a lot in the indoor season, like a lot. They usually split the squad, go up to Vanderbilt and Clemson. They call it the Bob Pollock. That usually winds up being on the same weekend, and they'll be doing that again as well. I think they wind up in Vandy twice overall in the indoor, Clemson 4 times, and South Carolina once. And then the ACC indoors are in Louisville. Indoor nationals are in Albuquerque. So definitely going to get used to that 80-mile drive up to Clemson, South Carolina. And then there's more in the spring, but we can get towards the outdoor schedule once we get past indoor.
Take us over to the pool where swim started off clean old fashioned hate week.
Yeah, so that one's interesting. It was the UGA invite this year. Tech does traditionally host their own invite, so a little bit odd to see them not hosting at Tech. But like we said last week, kind of after all of the big events that they hosted last year, I don't really blame them for taking a year off there. In terms of overall team performance, Georgia Tech did finish 5th on both sides. That sounds like a small number, but there were a small number of teams there, and 5 was the number of teams. I will say the men were closer than the women to cracking that 4th place spot. They finished just behind Florida State, 456.5 to 431. So that was, that's good, especially after kind of being thoroughly handled by Florida State in dual meet competition. But again, invites are always interesting how that translates. I will also note that the women outscored the men. They finished with 471. The women's score distribution among all teams was lower. Overall meet was won by Auburn on the women's side, Florida on the men. But I do have some good news. I know that kind of sounds kind of blah, probably. But I will say that Georgia Tech did break several records on the weekend, which is always a good thing to see.
All right. How many records are we talking here? Because I have them in front of me, and it's weird to think that this many records were broken in the same weekend.
Well, you see, it's kind of interesting because you can look at it as, we had 6 athletes break records, right? Denise Ertan, Batura Unlu, Mackenzie Campbell, Leandro Odorici, Daniel Cortez, and Will Cody. But you can also see it as 7 records being broken. That'd be Denise on the women's side breaking the 500 free, 1,000 free, 1650 free, 400 IM. Batur breaking the 500 free for the men. Mackenzie breaking the 200 IM, and the other 4 men listed, including Unlu, breaking the 400 free relay. But I think the most interesting tidbit of all, because there are a lot of ways to slice this, is the fact that Denise Ertan broke 2 records in the same event, which, if you're talking about weird occurrences that don't happen very much, that's got to be at the top of your list.
Impressive day for her. I mean, like, looking at the times, there are four NCAA B cuts, 4 individual records, and then including what you said about break your own record in the same day. It's honestly like a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a stellar performance for her.
Yeah. I mean, that's about as good as you can expect. You broke every distance record, and then the mile and the 1,000 in the same swim. And she also did come kind of close to breaking the 500 free record again in that as well, which would have been quite the performance. Three for the price of one would have been truly a blue moon type event.
Quickly rattle off for me the remaining B cuts and any other results that were notable.
Yeah, so all of our records were B cuts. Unlu got the closest to an A cut. For those that don't know, we'll go into more detail closer to when it actually matters. But a B cut basically puts you in the mix of potentially swimming, while an A cut guarantees you a spot, for lack of a better, more direct way to say that. Anyways, rest of the B cuts, and again, no guarantee they actually swim come March. That is Campbell notched another one in a different event. Niles Bogner. Batur Unlu also got a couple others. Zora Ripkova, Clarissa Sabin, Berke Saka, Mert Kilavus, Claudia Butterfield, Antonio Romero. Those are your B cuts. And again, if you get an A cut, you can swim them all. We'll talk more about the details once we get closer towards selection Sunday. I guess I don't know if they do it on a Sunday.
Selection day.
Towards big guy with a really big spreadsheet going one by one and adding people to events.
Big swim Saturday.
Yeah. And then in terms of diving, we did have a number of zones cuts, and that would include Anna Bradescu, Carmen Woodruff, Katie McKinton, and Ruben Lechuga. Boom.
Good stuff. Let's move over to O'Keefe Gym, or I guess Jervey Coliseum in Clemson.
Jervey Gym.
It's a
Jervey Gym with the super low drop ceiling.
Well, Mr. Purdy, we haven't heard you speak in a while. I'll let Jake rant for a bit. Why don't you walk us through what seemed to be, to me, a demolition of
It was a
Clemson.
demolition. We demolished their ceiling. Not really. They didn't actually break the ceiling, but there was a lot of spots that got hit by D'Amico getting. Everyone hit the ceiling. I'll just say that.
You know what that reminds me of? This is totally random. Okay. I used to play in a water polo in a pool with a drop ceiling, and the ball would just kind of like go through the drop ceiling, and then the tile would shatter, and then you got a pool full of ceiling tile. If I get asbestos, like the mesothelioma stuff one day, y'all need to like go handle that if I die. But yeah, that's a future problem.
No asbestos at this match. Good. It was a very easy 3-0 sweep. I forgot the score, the end scorings. I know the second set. We did the second set thing again, where we just demolished Clemson. Nothing. There was no challenge. It was very similar to the game when they came to O'Keefe, where it was just done really quickly. I was very proud of my sub headline that said that we finished the match faster than the runtime of Airplane, because it really only took an hour and 19 to finish the match. I was planning on I had a gathering planned at my house, and I told everybody I'm going to be watching this game and writing about it, so just be ready. I was done with both before anyone showed up because this match went so fast. Like it was It was a delightful thing to see, especially just after I sadly had to miss the Louisville match, and so I didn't see any of that. So I didn't have a great sense of how like I guess deflated the vibes were at that from that match. But either way, they drove up there, handled their business, and I think they're glad they finished that match in 89 minutes so they can get home and get more sleep than they otherwise would have.
I think one of the things that we were talking about when this game finished up was it was a good get right game, right?
Yeah, that's a way to put it.
It came at a good point and in the back end of the schedule where Tech needed to reset before those last two games that would really have big, big roles in determining postseason seeding.
Yeah, the next two games are big. I mean, we got to play Pitt on Wednesday in Pitt. Who I know they played Louisville. Do we know? Do we know how that match went against Louisville?
Pitt Louisville.
It was not. It was a wampin. If you know what I mean. It was not very.
As
say not
Louisville,
competitive.
Louisville wiped the floor.
Okay. It was like 3-0, and I think one of the sets was like 25-14. Like it was.
Okay, so we're good. So
we're
coming
like Georgia Tech playing like Virginia levels of
I see.
Yike.
Sometimes when you're on, you're on.
So we did our get right game. Pitt needs one.
Yeah.
Going into the tournament. So at worst, I think at worst we'll still pull out a set here. Like we already pulled a set out of, like, against Pitt when they played McCamish, and we were on the ropes trying to get a second one. Didn't quite pull it out. Granted, this would be a different environment than McCamish was and everything. I think we're a better team now than we were back then. Because I would say D'Amico's coming to herself a lot more. I think D'Amico's doing better. I think D'Amico's doing better than she was before. Not by a massive stretch, but I think she's doing better. Jake, please interrupt.
Yeah, I just went in. I was curious, so I went into the box scores here just to see some of the, the Louisville stuff. In their normal box score, they say L&N Federal Credit Union Arena, which is where they play. It's in their student center. Yeah. But this one said the Yum Center, but somehow the attendance was only 1,000 people, which is what they can do in their normal venue.
Interesting. No, that match it wasn't in the Yum Center. I saw at least this image of it. It was in their normal.
Cool. I was going to say that'd be really weird. Louisville can really pack the Freedom Hall when they play games there. Anyways, for completeness' sake, 25-15, 25-21, 25-18. I'd say that's about as solid of a sweep as Louisville can get over a top 10 team. So they're clicking, and Pitt, you don't want to be their get right game.
Yeah,
that would not be fun.
I would love to. I mean, here's hoping Bergman just unleashes, because we tend to. I mean, any game Bergman just goes off, it spells the end of teams. And
it's just hard to do that for a full match, that's.
I mean, that's what happened against Florida State. 38 kills and pulled it out. The Clemson game, though, it was very much a spread the load game. I mean, D'Amico had 4 kills even. Like, she was able to find her spots. So, we play. What this comes out Tuesday. So we play tomorrow afternoon. If you're listening to this on Tuesday at 5:00, after you finish your World Cup viewing, and then if we win that, I mean, that's an argument to be top 10 going into before we play Florida State the next weekend. So
2 wins would be very nice down the stretch.
2 wins would be huge. As long as we don't lose to Florida State, odds are we will likely be hosting an NCAA tournament game. We're at teen right now.
It would be nice. It would be really nice. It was really nice last year.
It really was.
I'm spoiled. That was phenomenal sporting events. Like, they're fun. It really helps. Your draw gets a lot better. I don't know. There's no downside to hosting.
No, there is not. Use the environment. Use the 20-minute sweat cleanup breaks that you have to use at times. Just do what you got to do.
I will say the Citadel guys were a bit annoying, but you know what? They were there having a good time, so I don't really blame them.
I wanted to pull up RPI just to compare. It has been updated through games that finished yesterday.
I think we're in the top 30.
Tech is sitting at 20.
Okay, so we moved up a spot.
Yeah, so you are looking at...
This is why we need a quality road win.
Yes.
Whoa.
We have that.
Yeah.
You are looking at having to jump Creighton, Houston, UCF, and Penn State for slot number 16 if you subscribe to all of the top 16 being your top 16 seeds. So,
and we probably play one of those teams in their own gym if you don't. I guess no, it'd be probably the one that's above them. Never mind. Sorry.
Someone's verbally posting. Pitt is 4, Louisville is 2. So there's your path right there. Florida State is down at 30. So still a very solid quality opponent. Win what you got. 2 games left. Win what you got. We'll talk about football and a couple other of the revenue sports right after this short break.
Yeah. So as always, our short break here features Section 103. Section 103 is this podcast's favorite place to buy Georgia Tech apparel. For those that don't know, it is Gold Friday going on now. Obvious reference to the current shopping phenomena that goes on after Thanksgiving. That's 20% off automatically through November 28th. Automatically. You don't even have to remember to do anything. It's just there. Free shipping over $70. 20% is applied to everything, and that includes the 5 new items that came out just this past weekend. That is Felice Bobby Dodd is now in navy background, not just gold, and then 5 different offerings of the white Ramblin' Wreck t-shirts. I guess script is probably the way to put it, but they got t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, and also white sweatshirts. Long sleeve stuff in white is so hard to come by for Georgia Tech. This is a phenomenal addition. I'm super stoked, and just another great addition to the best top to bottom place to get Georgia Tech logos, Georgia Tech, the not the typeface, the word mark, and then also all sorts of other eclectic good tech stuff. Check them out, and remember that through next Monday, the 28th, 20% off.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland. Mr. Grant, before we continue and talk about football, because I have a segue in mind for this, you had something that you wanted to double back to about swim.
It's not necessarily swim. It's also volleyball. It's also a couple of different sports. And now that you actually said swim, you're totally ruining what I was going to throw out there, which probably actually would have been obvious given my tie-in was listed in the swimming section. But, gents, I've put together this item that samples past Georgia Tech results, only conference results. I'm not crazy. Very hard to find and compile all this data. And among Georgia Tech's teams that play head-to-head matchups, I want you to guess what the top 3 over the last 6 or 7 years have been. Just off the top of your head.
Top matchups?
Top winning percentage.
Top winning percentage. I guess the ACC.
Of any of our match-based sports. That is baseball, football. There's one golf match in there, but that doesn't really count. So I'm excluding them.
Let me ask for one qualifier. There were recent ads to the conference. Is there no minimum?
Yeah, is this post expansion or all time?
I had originally done it out to the period where Jake has been writing with from the Rumble seat. But then I decided to just complete the trilogy, not trilogy, but the span, go for the entire time I've been at Tech, which is dated to fall 2016. The only reason it's not to Louisville's addition to get the entire, I guess, modern, quote unquote, sense of the ACC is because it takes forever to compile this because there's no one.
2016 to now.
2016 to now. And again, your sports are baseball, football, men's and women's basketball, men's swimming and diving, and women's swimming and diving. Men's and women's tennis, softball, volleyball. Those are your 10 options.
Well, it has to be volleyball.
Yeah.
Volleyball has to be like one of them.
That's one.
You don't have to agree, by the way.
I'm going to go with volleyball. I'm going to go with women's tennis as well.
Okay.
And then after that, oh, no, it's not going to be swim.
Conference win percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball.
Yeah.
All right. In that order, volleyball, women's tennis, and baseball. You're close. You're close.
Okay.
I thought I was going to get you with women's tennis, but women's tennis is highest by a decent chunk. Volleyball's second. Okay. They actually were decidedly not for the first 3 years.
I
But
forget the Collier had to clean up and then figure it out.
then they went yeet.
Jacob.
No, she had a solid 2016, and then 2017 was down. But third was not baseball. Baseball was fourth with women's basketball close
by
behind.
emergency. Fourth pick is softball.
No, softball. Softball did not #get good until very recently, and they were actually under 500 in conference last year
for recency bias.
Yeah, it's actually men's swimming and diving.
Hey,
is third. I was very surprised to see that.
Cursed to think about. Well, not cursed. It's very fun to think about, but it's very weird to think about.
Small sample size, right?
Right.
Other than football, swimming and diving had the smallest head-to-head conference like number of opportunities,
right?
Just because they only do like 3 or 4 in a given year. But yeah, so I was going to throw that in I thought me wanting to put it in the swimming and diving section would give it away. But,
yeah, I thought I realized that after you said
so
it.
I do have this data able to be sliced by opponent, and I have wins, losses, total score, differential, all that stuff. So if you ever have any questions, or
this will be a good trivia segment going forward. Just whip up a new one.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I built a website around it and everything. So hopefully y'all like that. If anyone who's listening wants any really specific info, or would like to incentivize us to build this out, the data further back, let us know. But yeah, like I said, opponent, site, sport, school year, month, date, postseason extras. It can filter any of the information. It's just a big drop down list of results. Sorry. Anyways, thank you for letting me indulge myself.
Somehow the history guy has created history analytics. I'm not really sure how I feel about that.
It's like he went to Georgia Tech or something.
It's like he has 2 degrees from the same institution or something.
Good lordy.
Yeah.
Who would do that? Who in their right mind would do that?
Sickos. Like
Speaking of sickos, Georgia Tech football won 21-27 in Chapel Hill over a ranked UNC team. Some numbers off of the top. Georgia Tech posted a 41% post-game win expectancy per Bill Conley, and per our own Robert Binion, he had it around 49%. So keep that in mind as a table setter for our discussion here. Tech's usual very good turnover luck sort of evened out in this game. I would say overall, UNC took a 14-0 lead, and personally, I thought that was enough for the second game in a row. But UNC kept Tech in this game by not slamming the door shut repeatedly when they had chances to, in hilarious fashion.
Best exemplified by that Downs. Everyone who's listening to this podcast has almost certainly seen it by now. Josh Downs dropping that pass in the end zone. Like, if you want the one play that was emblematic of their refusal, not just inability, refusal to slam the door on Georgia Tech. It's not the interceptions. It's not the getting 3 points in 4 trips to the red zone or whatever the stat was. It was literally dropping the ball. He had him toasted. Just,
absurd. Hey. It's absurd how UNC was like, no, take this game, please.
If you want to make a playoff, win the dang ball game. That's all you got to do. But
I think this is weird of I guess us as a Georgia Tech podcast to say, but I think UNC as a football program and as a football reputation this season has been very incredibly fraudulent, as we've seen when they get into shootouts with a meh App State team earlier this year, and lost to a meh Notre Dame team earlier this year.
This is why we always thought we had. I think when Sims and Pyron were still there, we thought we had somewhat of a shot here because we knew UNC in some spots was a little too fraudulent to be taken seriously as the rank that they had. Just the fact they play in a division that gave them the chance to have as good of a division as they have. Eventually, Coastal Madness was going to bite them, and look what happened.
I mean, it's very clear that no one is good in the Coastal to me.
No.
Everyone is bad. It's a goddamn bucket of crabs. Everyone brings each other down.
I'll bring
I,
on your note about it being 14-0 though. Like I was hosting a dinner party that night, and so I was kind of in
How
and
many
out. So I
dinner
watched
parties have you had recently? Sorry.
uh the volleyball and football were scheduled during back-to-back events and back-to-back days. But so I watched the first quarter before people showed up, and I was like, oh well, this is already done. Like 14-0 was enough for me to just not even consider it. And then I would check it out. I checked my phone at the third quarter. I was like, okay, we're not dead, but there's too much game left. And then I saw we were winning in the fourth, and I was like, oh well, I'm leaving the party. As in, I moved one room over and started watching. Uh, it was weird to have to feel like I have to emergency watch Georgia Tech football. I didn't think I'd have that feeling this year at
you
all.
had
Like
to you had to go into a different room and hide your shame.
it was all Tech people. I eventually we got people to watch, but
I maintain
yeah,
my point. You had to hide your shame.
okay, whatever.
I, I, Jake, I have some stats on this, but give me some more vibes. What did you see in this game that you liked? Let's start
You
with
failed
that.
to remember that I was in the middle of the woods. I was down with family in rural central Illinois. So my connection was spotty in the first half and then non-existent in the second. So my vibes entirely were not even that UNC's giving the game away, but just they couldn't be stopped. I mean, the very first play, they uncorked an 80-yard run just to run it all the way to the house. And, Tech hung around. I mean, they did a fairly decent job of being competitive, but, when it came time for, all right, it's like time for family dinner that you cannot ignore, it was also pretty easy to step away. I did eventually see the game winning touchdown and the end of the game there, but it was not an easy game to watch in the first half, and the hashtag emotions that run through you, seeing oh my gosh, look, we won, we weren't supposed to, we beat a good ranked team, we beat them on the road, like that doesn't really excuse the fact that it was also somewhat of a fluky win. I mean, 41% is and 49% post game win probabilities, not bad, but certainly a little higher than I would have expected. It seems like that game was a decent chunk UNC giving it back to us as much as it was us,
Yeah,
clawing out of a big hole.
Yeah. And I will say that Tech had a lot of really well constructed drives in the second half, right? I think they came out of the half with some and made some adjustments, and some of the play calling, especially in order to overcome that initial 14-point margin, was very well done. They set the tone. I think it was their second drive of the second half where they ended in a touchdown. They set the tone the entire way down the field. They were able to run the ball effectively. They were able to throw short passes. And they found gaps in the UNC defense, which you can see was very purposefully, or maybe not purposefully, but they were giving them a lot of space in the flats to work with and a lot of space on the edge. UNC just really failed to defend the pass well at all for a team that we had derided for the last couple of weeks as having a fairly poor passing game. So it was not a particularly good defensive performance from UNC whatsoever. I will say on the flip side, UNC's offensive line also not good. You cannot give up what's the number of sacks that I'm looking at here? You cannot give up 6 sacks to Georgia Tech and be considered a good offensive line, because that pass rush is not the greatest. It
not
seems
been
like
what's held us in games. That the other parts of the defense has been
yes,
strength, and it's like, okay, this is if we have anything to bank off, if it was that, but you gave us the whole defense to work with. That's different.
yeah,
That's different.
and
That spells for it.
these are the two things. I think these two, maybe along with more turnovers last year, were what motivated Tech or pushed Tech to a win last year when this was the Mercedes-Benz game. And I think Jake and I talked about that a bunch. This year it was just, okay, well, you survive and let UNC kind of make its own mistakes and just benefit off of those.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just a very, I think, Jake, you said
Well,
it best. And I think
even
you
then
pointed at
though,
the numbers too. It was just fluky. Like it
yeah,
just
even
didn't
then
feel
though,
clean.
executing on mistakes is the base of competency as well. Like that's not
Yeah.
something this team has ever. This year, I don't think at any game. Well, okay, maybe the Western Carolina game, but even then, that there wasn't that much there.
And
Like it's hard to tell if this team was of that quality. And when you say Zach Gibson's going to be the guy to make that happen too, it's like, okay, that's not the recipe. You would have had to think North Carolina had a really bad day for us to still have a bad half of football. And I mean, granted, we should have lost that game. The win probability of North Carolina on that last pass should have been 99.99% when Dobbs was holding the ball for a half second and then turned to zero immediately. So, I mean, there's the flukiness of that. But yeah, even then, showing a level of competency is a lot, and I think that'll also feed into the coaching discourse in a second.
and and, and to your point, capitalizing on mistakes is a sign of competency, but also forcing mistakes, right? It's not like UNC makes mistakes in a vacuum. So, obviously this is me kind of walking back what I said just a little bit, but like it wasn't that bad of a performance either. It was fine. They did what they needed to win. It was harder than it needed to be, but again, if this was a perfect team that executed every week since Canning Collins, they'd be at 7-4 and already locked up with a bowl, right? Or 6-5. Not to get too aggressive or out over my skis, but it's good Georgia Tech and bad Georgia Tech almost. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing, I think.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm getting a little bit too far ahead of myself there.
I don't know if it's a Jekyll and Hyde thing. I think the thing that we've run into this season under in the Brent Key or the Brent Key part of the season has been the offense is not the focal point. The defense sets the tone for what the performance is going to be like that day, and the defense says, "Hey, we're going to keep you in this game." And it's something that we've seen most weeks, honestly. Like Virginia was like that. Miami was like that. This game was like that. Duke, actually, I think all of these games, maybe other than the Florida State demolition, well, even the Florida State demolition is a counterexample.
I'd say.
Yeah, the defense was constantly keeping the other team either forcing mistakes or limiting the damage that they could do. The defense was constantly keeping this team in games, and the offense was letting them down. I think in this game, the offense turned it around late in the game, right when it needed to. Zach Gibson overall had a pretty good day, which, given some of his earlier endeavors, was a bit of a surprise. I think he got better as the game progressed. He had a really good second half, I would say. But I think one of the things that was key to their success in this game was to Tech's success in this game was weaving possessions and plays with Gibson in with Tyson Fomachan, right?
Yeah.
They had Gibson throwing passes and they had Fomachan running the ball a lot. And that sort of interplay where UNC couldn't stop a butterfly, but like UNC was not able to handle that sort of volatility is not the right word, but that sort of dynamic play. That sort of variety, right? I should use the simpler word. The variety under center and in the shotgun, and it was just, and that proved really, really effective. And it's something that I'd like to see them continue to do, right? It's something that worked. Obviously, now there's tape on it, so you might not be able to go back to that well a whole bunch. But if you're saying I now need to, I built this entire offense around having a quarterback that is mobile in the pocket and good with his feet, but now I don't have that guy. But you have two guys that are good at different skill sets. Then why not try to find situations that make them fit their strengths the best?
I'm just hearing that Kirby Smart's got a prep for two quarterbacks, which means double the work. So something's going to slip through the cracks. That's a joke.
Let's not put that cart before that particular horse. Some other news, well, not news, some numbers to wrap up. Tech's EPA per play, 0.09, 57th percentile performance, not bad. Success rate was 85th percentile at 50%. Again, not bad. Yards per play was pretty disappointing. I think that's pretty indicative of their first half performance. It was at 5.32, 31st percentile. Again, Zach Gibson, Tyson Fomachan, good day under center, 0.3 EPA per dropback, 75th percentile. I'm not going to read all of these numbers because that would be Jake level of reading the baseball schedule that he did one time that I ended up taking out. But like, I think when you contrast this, like Zach Gibson threw 18 passes, completed 13 of them. His QBR per ESPN was 73.7. You compare that to Drake May, who threw 30 passes, got picked off, sacked 6 times, and had our model had him at a 17 QBR. It's just night and day, especially considering that the pedigree that Drake May had. And Tech didn't even allow a sack. They didn't allow a single sack in this game. UNC had 6.
That always
it's
helps.
So weird to read this box score out.
It's weird.
I know we have to move on, but any final notes on the game before we move on to a different topic?
Nah.
It was, hey, wins are great. I love it. This critically does not take us out of bowl contention, even with 5 wins, if we likely finish with 5 wins, because there are 15 5-win teams for 9 remaining bowl spots, and we're 37th at academic progress ranking. So there's a world where enough teams lose and we still make a bowl game with 5 wins. Not guaranteeing it, of course, because the math can work out against our favor and there will be enough 6-win teams. But the season could still have 2 games left in December, or one in December. So we'll see how it all
is one of those really a game? Anyway, moving on.
Well, hey, it's critical for our budgets for next year.
Hey, the opportunity to have a couple extra weeks of just practicing and getting out there, not the worst thing in the world. Just more opportunities to, especially given that we still don't know the future of the team, right? There's no coach that's been signed per our plebeian knowledge and access, but it's not the worst of the world, no matter who or whom winds up being on that new staff.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I think that's a great segue into talking about maybe some of the aftermath of this game. Let's put this in therapy words, shall we? I think, I feel, I know. Jack, let's start with you. What are your current feelings about the Georgia Tech head coaching position, and what would you think is the best choice for them moving forward? Not necessarily a candidate.
Yeah, I think this is. I grew up a Braves fan, and and a lot of what I learned about what's good for an internal structure within an organization is how well you develop the people within your organization. Case in point, Brian Sticker over the last 30 years, just at times thought about hanging it up, but Lordy, he became manager of the year. Could have won it this year if it weren't for Showalter doing such a great job. Gives us a World Series, gets us a game away 2 years ago. That 3 innings away, actually. We had a lead in that in Game 7. We were that's emblematic of, I think, the ideal of just like have a great institutional structure to build guys within and bring them up and go that route. I can't say that Tech exactly has that right now. And I think anyone that's been watching the program close enough would agree with that. So, and that said, I'm not saying that Brent Key is bad at his job. I'm not saying that he hasn't been developed in a positive ways while he's here. He's certainly been a boon to this team. Now, do I know? I have no idea if he'll be the long-term solution. If he is, great. If he can be, but I think my feeling is that I am not opposed to anyone external coming in. I know we all have our favorites, and they've been favorites of mine as well. I will not be disappointed if it's Brent Key, though. Now, of course, if by some miracle we beat Georgia, I think you just give him the job on the field. Like I don't think you waste any time with that because he becomes a legend at that moment. Like you don't need to worry about it. Everyone's gonna buy in. There won't be any argument with that. But I think it's mostly important to have a way to I think it's what's most important is find a guy that will press the institutional reset button effectively to where we don't have to do the 5-year rebuild thing that we were trying to do with Collins, but at least gives us a healthy sense of direction compared to where we were with Collins.
Mr. Grant, how about you?
I mean, I was riding the dopamine high a couple of times this year, to be completely honest, and I think that's a fair place to be. But I think I feel like if I knew that it was the right fit, like I'd feel it. You know what I mean? And I just feel like there's one thing missing, and I can't quite place it. I'm sure you have numbers and stuff to back up your conclusions. And I like the guy. I don't know. I wish I knew more of what, honestly, Jay Bott was thinking / looking for. If they come out and say, hey, we're hiring Key, whether it's money or, he's the guy who won the interview or whatever that is, as long as it's well reasoned, I'm going to take it well. I just don't want them to be like, oh, yeah, whatever. And I don't think they're going to be like that. But whatever it is, I just want it to be done well and explained and said, he's our guy. This is why. And I can be at peace with that.
I'll note that the fact that we don't have a permanent guy now, I think also shows that, hey, we're taking our time with this because it's been a couple months now. Like we would have called it rushed if it happened by now, I think, and it didn't. It hasn't.
Yeah. No matter who it is, as long as they say, here's who it is, here's why, this is what they're saying, I can get on board with. Not that I wouldn't be on board no matter what, but you know what I mean. Like I just. Yeah.
They also be more people available after the season, anyways, because there's turnover everywhere. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think
kind of a half answer, so you're welcome.
Yeah, fantastic. I think this search has been incredibly buttoned up. I think the institution has done a good job of at least running this process, quote unquote, the right way, or at least the way that I feel is the right way, right? Doing due diligence, doing this like an SEC program might. Nothing really leaks. And unless you have very crazy boosters like Auburn, we'll get to that in a second when we do picks. But like nothing really leaks. Everything's buttoned up. It's a very need to know basis. Like we don't know any information in general, but we know even less this time around. So I think that is fundamentally good process, right? I think that is emblematic of good process, making sure all of your T's and I's are dotted and crossed.
It tells you the little things are going, that they're taking care of the little things.
Yeah.
What I would be concerned about is the good process getting overridden by emotional boosters. Right. That and
tell them how you feel.
War Eagle.
I mean, it's not just an Auburn thing, but it's a nerd thing, right? We have to look at the data. Let me put this in the therapy words. I feel that Tech has to look at the data and make a decision based on the information in front of them. They cannot make a decision based just on vibes for what is I feel that they cannot make a decision based on vibes for what is effectively the largest marketing apparatus for the institution. Yeah. You have to be, especially when you are faced with a budget deficit or a revenue deficit, not only compared to the Big Two, right? Your Big Ten and your SEC, you can't borrow against future revenues, but also against your peers in your own conference. You have to make sure that you take care of business, you do good process, even if it doesn't work out, right? But you have to set yourself up for success by executing on good process, you can't just let vibes get ahead of you and override the process. That is my piece. I don't want to name a candidate. I don't want to talk about Key specifically, but processes. I'm being process oriented.
Yeah,
The result is the result, but they have to have good process.
I'll say on vibes, like I think we could refine the term a little bit to like people. I mean, a lot of people in these circles, like they have relationships with each other. Like a lot of people know a lot of people know of a lot of people know how to get to other people through people. So while there are vibes, there are still actual human relationships at play here that can be influential, and that may bring out other insights too that stats will just never do. I mean, that happens in every single hiring thing. A lot of decisions, every decision has some fact element and some just like what your gut says, and everyone regrets it when you don't listen to your gut. Granted, this is a much larger position. It's not like, oh shoot, I should have gotten Chick-fil-A earlier or something like that. So I think
Oops, I bought an extra Coke and I bought an extra Coke and accidentally purchased a new football coach.
All that to say,
Whoops.
I think you're right that the process and like they got to go through the hard data properly is first and foremost.
I will say to wrap this up, but before I wrap this up, Jake, do you have anything before I do wrap this up?
Nah, I mean the time will tell, and the waiting's the hard part. So who knows how we'll be talking in a month.
Great segue, because the season's basically over. So I mean, you'll see an announcement we saw the announcement for Jeff the first week of December. So I would imagine something like that is similar, regardless of if it's someone who is currently employed, bowl game, like what, not employed, whatever, what have you. Like, you need to have someone in place before the holidays, both from a logistical perspective and from a recruiting perspective.
Yeah, that last time, that like weekend or whatever between Paul stepping down and Jeff being hired was still wild. I remember walking through the Tech Hotel because they were hosting a ton of recruits. It was like the last weekend before early signing day, and it was just like assistant coaches. And to be fair, we were walking through in a big crowd. They're like, "Oh, where's the party at?" kind of thing. I was like, "No, you guys stay here." But I was like, why did we even? I think it was raining, but yeah, no, just an odd time. So it definitely makes sense that we need to get this locked down.
Yeah, there is a end in sight to this. I think you give it probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll know something more concrete. And I'm not saying that with any sort of sourcing. That is in taking a page from Jake. It's a vibe. It's a vibe that I have. Moving on to one of Jake's favorite sports, women's basketball. Well, actually, how about you take this one? Walk us through the week in women's basketball.
That's what I write about.
Yes, but I needed the segue. You forget that the purpose of a host is to segue, not to provide.
Jake, start talking about women's basketball.
So women's basketball is a sport. They play 5-on-5. Usually,
get to the point.
I wanted.
Anyways, Tech did play 2 games last week. They're both against SEC teams, and we flipped the results from last year. And you know what? I'm not sure how I feel about it. Even though Auburn is still probably not going to be very good this year, UGA would have been a nice win to have. They split it. UGA game was at home. Jack, I'm sure you could talk more about that. I did watch all of it, but I'm not about to steal your thunder given that you were there. And on press row, what did you see?
I saw what Coach Fortner saw, which was a team that could not rebound to save its life, and that does not have toughness to take care of itself. They won the first half and the entirety of the Auburn game, surely out of dumb luck that neither team could put back a rebound or an offensive rebound. The entire game in either that first 1.5 game stretches, Auburn out rebounded the crap out of us, and then we shot decently well, which is why we won that. Georgia also, by the time the first quarter was over, had doubled Tech in rebounds, 16-8, and it just stayed at a very large margin the whole time. Nerea Hermosa, without having Stroutmane and Lorela Kubai there at 6+ footers to take care of business on the boards, is just killing us. We have a lot of speed, but we don't have the height really to match it. And because we just allowed putback after second chance opportunity, it wore us out. Georgia did a double team, a half court press that just destroyed any sense of offensive flow and rhythm, which Nell mentioned in her post game on Sunday. And Foley was just like, there's a lot of ways to grow from it, she mentioned, but it was just like there was just no excuses for it. Like they just got out hustled in both games. That's the brunt of it. We got 1-1 at least out of it. The offense is there and it's good, but it's still. I think play that Georgia game in 3 weeks. I think you'd have at least a closer result.
I think my takeaway from both of these games was Tech's. We had mentioned before the season that Tech had questionable amounts of depth, and it definitely did not have a lot of size. And both of those things got exploited. The size bit got exploited versus Auburn, but the depth and the size bits got very exploited.
Yeah.
In the other game.
Rod McKenzie asked about the rotation in the press conference, and Nell said that we don't have a set rotation yet. Like we've put out the same starting crew every time, but the rest of it's still TBD as of now. So the team's still learning who it is. We were starting a freshman at point guard with Tony Morgan. And Aaliyah Love is barely scoring off the bench right now. She scored 2 points last game. It was a good stretch. She got a steal and brought it down the court. But then later in the game, we have a 3-on-1 and Bianca Jackson can't make the layup or find the extra pass.
Yep.
So there's a lot of chemistry stuff still to be solved on the offensive side. That was evident. That's been evident since the scrimmage warm-up game we had against Clayton State.
And I feel like if we're talking about not making that extra pass and just being a little bit off, it seems like a lot of this stuff is going to be real green when we talk about the men's basketball team too.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Love
narratives, parallels.
And I will say, Tech did keep it competitive there for a while, but I mean, it just seemed like they were next to nothing on the glass. Very hard to win games when you're giving teams not just second and third chances, but fourth chances. That's not good.
Yep.
And yeah, like they got outworked and the shot selection wasn't there. And that makes it tough. It was a game that was in shooting distance until it just got out of hand at the end.
Yeah, Georgia went on an 11-0 run, which is how they took the lead in the third quarter. We were still decently close there in the at the end of the third, but no, by the fourth it felt like garbage time lasted the whole quarter.
I think the worst part of that is that you could kind of see that coming in the first quarter, right? Because Georgia was getting so many of those second, third, fourth chance points off of offensive rebounds and turnovers. They were able to get more shots up, and they just got very unlucky in those first two quarters about what was falling, right? A lot of clanks off the rim, a lot of layups that just bounced out, and those didn't in the second half. Those started falling. Regression set in. So Tech just kept allowing them to get in the paint and score very easy baskets.
Oh yeah, no, their paint points.
They got burned by it.
Like 75% of Georgia's points were in the paint. Like they took anything they wanted in there. There was just
it just comes back to not having size in that on that part of the court. I was going to say pitch, but yeah, that part of the court.
I think we only beat Auburn. I would say they had 3 freshmen starting that game. Like they were just a young team that was inexperienced, but that still got the same kind of chances that Georgia got, which is just scary to think about. That it's just like, okay, you give any experienced team a shot to offensive rebound against us, we're gonna be torched. The ACC is good. There's like 5. We played 9 ranked teams this year, or 9 teams that got votes, and we have who is it? Oh, it's not Butler. The other school is Belmont soon, who did get votes. So,
and they're a great team. They played us tough last year, and they are a tournament regular.
And we got to go there.
They moved from the Ohio Valley to the Missouri Valley, which will only make me shill harder for them because the Missouri Valley is my favorite conference in all of college basketball. It's a long story, Jack. Don't ask. But we can talk about it some other time. Belmont's a good program. And Murray State was a good ad for the Missouri Valley, too. Anyways, it's not gonna be an easy year, right? And yes, you play these hard. Well, you can always play UGA, but you play a challenging non-conference slate because what's waiting is not going to be any better. Between Louisville, between NC State, Virginia Tech is on the up and up. I think they're doing some good work in their non-ref programs overall. It doesn't really show in volleyball yet, but men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, just really, really strong showing from VT lately. But ACC is not going to get easier, so you got to win now. Like that's the time. Beat South Florida. That's important.
That is the next game on the list. They will play South Florida in one of those Maui Invitational style tournament
Myers,
things.
Florida.
I don't really get what those are and why those exist. That's Friday at 7:30 on something called Flow Hoops in Fort Myers. So keep an eye out for that, I guess. Let's switch over to the men's side of things. Jake, we were in the house for the NIU game, which got – Jack was there too, probably sitting on Media Row, which is why we didn't cross paths.
Callaway. I got Callaway seats this time. I was living large.
He got a hell of Vienna on the house because in the Callaway Club, they feed you. And when you're a plebe like me, you just show up and hope that, you can survive. Actually, we did get food before, so
yes,
maybe that's
we did.
They did feed. They do
Anyway, what I was going to say is that this was a very, very stupid second half, like exceptionally stupid, like third quarter ish.
Mm-hmm.
That ended up being fine, but you could smell the vapors on this one, like the Atlanta sports vapors on this one for a large stretch of the second half.
And something I appreciate about today's game, we're recording this immediately after the Utah game, which, gosh darn it, all this talking has made me forget about how mad I was about that game. Anyways.
You were very upset.
I appreciate, well, if you don't spot the other team a 12-0 lead, it's a lot easier to win, Akshay. That's the Jake Grant analysis. I don't need advanced stats.
Eye emoji face.
You play to win the game.
Just rebound. Anyways, no.
Well, also that
I appreciate that at least today they did the third quarter nap at the beginning of the first half, so that way we knew what was up. But Georgia Tech, it's been a thing in every sport, I'm sure, at some point or the other. But men's basketball is especially prone to just plopping out 8 minutes without a made field goal, and that makes it very challenging to win the games, especially when you're playing Power 5 or some level of major-ish program, right? It's very tough to win games when you're not scoring and when you're not making critical shot selection, because there's a lot of times when this team, you saw it against NIU, you saw it against Utah, you saw it against Georgia State. It's the extra pass or finding a higher percentage shot is almost always a better call than some of the stuff we've been getting. And to their credit, they're 3-1. They got a lot of season left. There are going to be a lot of winnable games in the ACC. You heard it here first. But it's. I'm not going to say it's the same problem as always because I feel like we've learned a lot, right? I think Javon Franklin is going to be the answer up the middle, and I think he looks great. And I think a lot of these guys are just. They're in a similar spot to the women, right? They're new folks, and they're still getting in the mix. And I think that is true of all the games we've seen since we last recorded a podcast.
I'll go one step further. I will say it's the same things that we've seen before because they still can't really shoot effectively from the free throw line. It sucks. This has been a thing for I'm sorry, I'm going to rant here a little bit. This has been a thing for a decade now. I don't understand how you can be this bad for this long at shooting free throws.
The women are bad at it too, so something's in the water in Zelnak.
Zelnak. It's frustrating. Those are frustrating. I think especially today. Just to set the context, Tech played Utah in the Fort Myers tip-off tournament. They also did a tip-off tournament today. That game tipped off at 6:30. Tech lost by 4. And that was a game, like you said, in which they trailed very early. It was 23-4. They came back to lead by 4, and they would have been able to put the game away if they had gone better than 50% from the free throw line. Multiple times they would have been able to put that game away. Utah was fouling them a bunch. It was just, it's super frustrating to see them constantly be bad at this year after year after year.
After year after year. Sorry, that's a
on
reference.
That one point, you can say that it is the same exact problem. I think you mentioned too the shot selection, and that was down the stretch versus Utah, especially in the fourth quarter or what have you. Oh my God, there were some very, very poor shots taken there, and they were like off balance. Like from mid range to long range, like shots that you don't really want to take and that are going to be low percentage. Like they need to do a better job of getting the ball to the hoop and putting it in. It sounds very simple and it sounds very reductive, but like that's the end all be all of this. They're just not doing a good job of getting penetration and honestly like creating looks for themselves.
Jack, this is your time to shine. I thought you'd have some. You looked ready.
No, not really. No, I was just reacting to that. I thought that I agree with all that. This is not my bread and butter is this team, but
just use soccer metaphors. That's how I do it.
You know, if free throws are penalty shots, you really should be converting most of these. Like, it's a free shot at the bucket. Come on, guys. Like, do
that's
these guys
literally in the name. It's a free throw.
Do they not? I mean, this is more just speaking on my butt. So I mean, I would think if I played basketball, knowing that I had that I had at points the shot to have a free bucket, I would practice that all the time to make that a lock. I know that's a hard to still knock down. Also, I was an underhand free throw shooter, but that's just me.
Oh, that's bold of you.
It was effective.
I'm looking for the box score real quick. I don't think they've posted it yet because there are a couple things that I did note. So give me 1 second.
I'll vamp while you do that. They will finish up the tournament. I think the Marquette Mississippi State semifinal. I don't really know what to call it. These tournaments are always weird to me. That game is ongoing right now, I believe. I don't really know what the status is, but that next game will be on Wednesday. And then Tech will be back at home on Saturday at 4 p.m. versus North Alabama. So a couple games here Marquette is usually a good opponent. I'm not basketball plugged in. I'm not going to be able to tell you how good they are right now. Mississippi State has never struck me as quite as a basketball school. So question marks abound there. But they'll get a challenge, I guess, on Wednesday, and then they have a get right game scheduled on Saturday. So we'll see what the status is and what adjustments they've made pretty quickly here.
Yeah. So just going through some of the stats, news, and notes for those who didn't watch. Tech went through the first 6 minutes of the game without a point. Tristan Maxwell scored at 14:06 to cut Utah's lead to 12-2. Not great. Another note, at one point, Utah led by 19 as late as about 10 minutes left in the first. 23-6 or 23-4 is not something that you want to spot another team, because I think it's pretty inarguable that, yes, Georgia Tech did take another nap down the stretch. All of their points after a Tristan Maxwell 3 to go up 57-54 with 7 minutes to play. Tech again did not make a field goal. And if you look at it, right, we talked about NIU just basically being non-existent for 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes of the half. You can say, hey, Jake, what if you threw out those first 6 minutes of the first half and the last 7 of the second half, and to that end, you'd be somewhat correct in saying that Georgia Tech did outscore Utah 57-31, which is pretty emblematic of them forcing turnovers, of them capitalizing, of having a solid shot selection, of frankly being more lucky. They didn't turn the ball over much. And at the end of the day, Yeah, that is true. But you can't just only play a third or 2/3 of the game, right? It's what you do with the entire thing. So I think that's kind of where I'm hung up, because at the end of the day, this team has a lot of potential. It's just not there yet. And yeah, if you are producing for 2/3 of the game for the full game instead of 2/3, I think this is a team that shows a lot of the promise that we kind of speculated on in the past.
Well, I have nothing more to say on men's basketball. So how about we do some picks, shall we?
Yeah, let's rattle them off real quick. Let the people get
It's rivalry week in the United States. Let's start on Black Friday at 2 p.m. on Fox. England versus the United States. Mr. Purdy, you're up first.
I believe that we will probably lose 3-1 in that match.
Disappointing. Mr. Grant.
1,776 to nothing. That's my prediction.
There we go.
He didn't actually give a team. He didn't pick a winner in that one. So take that.
Actually, if you want to go, American Revolution and War of 1812, I guess we're 1-1, right?
There was that time we rebuilt the entire country, but we'll take that. We'll let them have that one. Let's move on to actual, or at least American football. 3:30 on ABC. NC State versus North Carolina. UNC favored by 6.5 points. Mr. Grant.
You know what? NC State is very snake bitten with UNC. I'll take UNC. Get right.
Mr. Purdy.
I don't know about that. I guess North Carolina was just a drop pass away from winning, so yeah, I'll still take them.
NC State is somehow ranked still. That's very bizarre to me. I guess there have to be 25 teams in a bowl.
Just run out of teams eventually.
Tech got 2 votes in the coaches poll.
I know. See,
who knows cursed. What people are doing?
It gets ridiculous.
That's extremely cursed. 7:30 on ABC. Florida at Florida State. Florida State favored by 9.5. Mr. Grant.
Florida State, easy, all the way to the bank.
Mr. Purdy.
Yep, same. I kind of forgot that Florida had 5 losses.
1 to Vanderbilt. In fact,
yes.
Noon kick on ABC on Saturday. South Carolina at Clemson. Clemson favored by 14.5? Question mark? Mr. Purdy?
I mean, I think the bettors, I'm guessing, are blaming the Tennessee defense for not doing it, and then Hendon Hooker getting the torn ACL, so gifting some points there. I'll still take the Tigers. They're ranked. I mean, they really need this game just for staying in it purposes. So I think they'll play right.
Mr. Grant?
Yeah. Until Clemson proves otherwise, them taking a home loss would be pretty unprecedented. It's been like more than half a decade at this point.
Syracuse keeps trying and nearly succeeding.
But yet, here we are.
Weird times we live in. SEC Network, 3 p.m. Louisville versus Kentucky. Kentucky favored by 3.5, Mr. Grant.
Yeah, I'm going to take Louisville. I'm not really sure why UK is favored. I haven't seen it for them other than some smoke and mirrors recently. So, yeah, give me the Cards. They're playing well.
Mr. Purdy.
I'm picking the over on 2 ounces of bourbon per person drunk before the game. That will lead to a Louisville
safe
win.
Bet. Extremely safe bet. 3:30 on some network. There's no network listed for this one. That's weird. Probably on the RSN. Wake Forest at Duke. Wake favored by 3.5, Mr. Purdy.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I got plenty of Duke friends now, but who thought this would be a 7-4 versus 7-4 game? That's still pretty impressive for this particular game.
Like a very good game that's getting shunted over to the RSN.
It really is. I'm gonna take Wake, and then Duke wins next year.
Wow, that feels like a fence post sitter answer, Mr. Grant.
I'm taking Duke. I have sold myself quietly on Duke winding up with 9 overall wins this year. I still don't like them. I'm not a big Duke guy, but I think that would be amusing to me. And the line is close enough that, you know what? Sure, let's go with it, Duke.
Mike Elko doing better in his first season at Duke, which was supposedly a woebegone program, than Jimbo and his $90 million contract is very, very funny to me. 7:30 on ESPN3. Syracuse at Boston College. Syracuse favored by 10.5. Mr. Grant.
Syracuse has really done a phenomenal job of showing us who exactly they are these past 5 weeks. I feel a little bit bad for them. That said, I'm not convinced that Boston College has the juice to beat them. I'll take
Mr. Purdy.
Neither do I. Give me the orange.
Final game, 8 p.m. on ACC Network. Pittsburgh at Miami. Noted rivals, Pittsburgh and Miami. Pitt favored by 6.5 points, Mr. Purdy.
Make it 7 at least on that one. That Miami's got nothing in the tank. They're in that weird boat of also being a 5-win team that can make a bowl game, but lordy, I hope they do not if they have an even remote chance.
Mr. Grant, you have a con.
It would be helpful for us if Pittsburgh were to win. Yes. So let's go Pitt.
I think another Miami coaching search for the second year in a row would be very funny. I'm just saying. Jake.
Does anyone want to pick Georgia Tech to win? Just want to put it out there. Anybody? No? Okay.
They're playing a game this week? Didn't know about that.
Let's just, stick our head in the sand and pay attention to volleyball on Wednesday first.
Mr. Grant, sicko pick of the week. I see you picked something that is, God, so on brand.
My sicko pick of the week. I feel like this is just Jake picks the Illinois game half of the time, but
they're a pretty sicko team.
I feel like the matchup of Illinois squandering their best season in 15 years by losing to Purdue, a bad Purdue team and a bad Michigan State team, and then some highway robbery shenanigans from the refs against Michigan when they and a inexplicably dumb loss to a bad Indiana team to open the year. This Illinois team is a couple weird plays from, dare I say it, being like 11-0. Well, maybe not weird plays because Michigan State was pretty throttling on the part of Sparty against Northwestern, who's 1-10, whose only win came in a massive Scott Frost special to absolutely Northwestern has not won
in Ireland.
America this year. Their only win is in Ireland.
This is incredible.
I cannot believe that this game means so little because of how truly awful Northwestern has been. And Illinois, dare I say, turning rather startling competency into just the most snake-bitten of snake-bitten. And if that's not a nice little metaphor for Illinois as a whole, as a state, I don't really know. Don't really know what is. Illinois is favored by 14. I think they can cover it. And good Lord, we could have not had the Ferences in the Big Ten championship. I think it's still possible, but man, do I not want to see Iowa just get dumpstered by the winner of Michigan, Ohio State. So,
but isn't that fun? Isn't that what you live for?
No, it's boring. It's bad. It's bad television.
Personally, I just like watching the punters. The punters, punter elite punting school, Iowa. I've always said, Mr. Purdy, BYU, Stanford. Give me the high level overview here.
I mean, I think historically this would never have been that great a game, but BYU is supposed to be like half decent this year, and Stanford's just awful. They don't have their mascot got banned. There's a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on over there.
Go Bears, go Cal.
Supposedly there was some weird shenanigans happening at BYU's campus this year as well. So it's just a weird melting pot of a lot of crazy non-football factors blending into a horrible West Coast game. So I hope no one gets hurt, and I hope they have fun.
Did this get put on the Pac-12 network, or is this on a TV station that people can actually watch?
As I scroll down very, very quickly, it's on FS1 at 11 p.m. Eastern. They got the hyper late game.
Oh, that's disgusting. Speaking of sicko picks of the week, I picked the Egg Bowl. I'm not giving you a winner in this game, but it's purely sicko. One, because it's the Egg Bowl, and two, one of the coaches might be leaving for another job again. So it's gonna be ridiculous. In 2019, this game possibly started a global pandemic. So correlation, causation, throw your records out the window for rivalry games. Am I right?
Who knows?
Gentlemen, I think that is about it for us this week. We have gone for, oh my Lord, almost 100 minutes. Mr. Grant, Mr. Purdy, do you have anything else that you'd like to share before we walk on out of here?
I do appreciate that in my modified commute this week, there is a stretch of it that I can see from the train, 5 breweries in a half mile. So that's pretty impressive density. But other than that, pretty normal here. I hope everyone has a phenomenal Thanksgiving and remember the reason for the season and all that.
Mr. Purdy.
If you listened this long, thank you so much. It does mean a lot to us.
We are literally
Yes.
doing it for whoever is still listening right now.
At this point, we really are. I hope you enjoy your turkey, whatever meat or non-meat things you decide to eat this weekend. You enjoy your football. Don't live or die with Georgia Tech this weekend. It's probably not a healthy endeavor, as much as it seems like.
I ask you again, you
podcast.
keep mentioning this game that Georgia Tech is supposedly playing this weekend. I wasn't aware of one.
What is football? I don't know.
It's the sport the United States plays on Friday against England and Qatar.
Qatar.
I don't need that stress. I don't need to talk about that stress. We're done. Mr. Grant, walk us out of here.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We really do appreciate it. We're thankful for all of you. We're also thankful for Section 103. I would say that up and down and sideways, even if they didn't reach out to us. So we love Section 103. Go check them out at Section 103 at Twitter.com. And you can also find them at section103.com. You can find us at Jake Grant and at Jack Nicholas, also on Twitter, as long as Twitter is still kicking. You can also find the blog at FTRS blog on Twitter as well. Comment, DM us, interact with us. We see all that stuff. We definitely want you to hear what you have to say, because all that steers what we do here.
We're posting on Facebook again. We're back on Facebook after 2 years.
Yes. That honesty
The
time.
Bird app is very sick and dying.
I forgot that we had a Facebook for a while there, but it's back. Thank you, Jack. We do have a website. This gets posted with an article. You can comment there. You can comment on other stuff. You can just read stuff. Go ask a question on the mailbag, because for some reason I'm doing that this week. Anyways, you can find us also via email at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. This was very long-winded. It was a long-winded episode. Basically, all the sports are in action at this point, except for baseball and softball and I guess tennis. So tune in, tune out. Wednesday, volleyball. Saturday, football. Good night. Good luck. Go Jackets.